Hi, everyone. We are at the top of the hour, so we will go ahead and get started. I am JC, and I'm on the Learning and Development team, and I'll be the host today. I'll be sharing my screen, and Brittany will be giving a brief overview of some of the content at the beginning, and then we'll dive into question and answer. So I will go ahead and start sharing my screen and hand it over to Brittany as well.
Thanks, JC. So there's a couple things that we wanted to highlight as sort of as an intro for these calls. So the first one is that we're really excited about this manager review since it's the first time that we've had managers participating in the annual compensation review process. In previous years, what's happened is we've done all of the evaluations, and then the people team or compensation team has suggested an input. It's been reviewed by managers, but after it's already been approved, typically that's because we haven't had a lot of discretionary funds out of our budget in the past. This year we do have discretionary funds in some groups, so that's why when you log into Compaas, you'll see a compensation before, compensation adjusted, and then a discretionary amount if your slate hasn't been auto-approved. So what we wanted to do briefly, for just so everyone has a good base level understanding, is actually show the screenshot in a test case. We can't share it aside from what's in the handbook because I only see the live slates myself, but sort of show what each field means, what you're seeing, and then what to do with the fields as an action item. So on these slates, you would see your reports that are on your slate that are eligible for this compensation review. Eligibility is anybody who started on or before October 31st. So that's who's reviewed in this annual compensation review cycle. You'd see their name, their title, and then what benchmark they're associated with. The level is a back-end job code for us. You can ignore that. It's just a way for the system to be able to pull all this information together. And then the compa group is what was inputted into Bamboo HR in the November review, and that's used in the calculation to get to the minimum of the compa group to apply to the compensation adjusted. So what you see in the compensation before and adjusted is their current either base salary or OTE. If it's OTE, an eligible person, you'd see an OTE signal to the left of it in pink. And then the compensation adjusted is what the compensation team is saying is the minimum that we should offer this person going into fiscal year 2021. And that's calculated and derived by looking at the greater of the minimum of their compa group that was selected in the new compensation calculator, or their cost of living adjustment, whichever one is larger. And then to the right of that is the discretionary. So if there is discretionary funds in your group, if there are not, your slate was auto-approved because there's no discretionary funds to allocate, so there's no action item on your part. But if this is available to you, you can add in additional dollar amounts or percentages, to make sure that your team member is getting the raise that you would want reflected. This will be approved up through each indirect manager. So you would take your discretionary, your manager can edit, increase or decrease what you've submitted, all the way up to the leader, who's the final approver for budgets. Now, what you see on this screenshot is that there is no budget, and that is true for everybody except for the leader of that group. The only person managing to a budget is the executive. So if we were looking at Eric Johnson's slate, for example, in engineering, he was the only one who would actually see the budget. So that's why the manager or leader of the group might be adjusting any of the discretionary amounts that you as the manager, director, or senior director might put in here. And then the last two fields is what the final output would be based on what's inputted from compensation adjusted and discretionary, and then any notes that you want to add. So if you click on the little notes, you can add notes as to why, give some context so that your manager can see what's happening. So you can continue to do this by saving your draft. Once you save and submit, it's going to roll up to your manager, and there's no way to roll it back down. So once you submit it, they're the next ones that can make any changes. You can no longer make changes to your slate. And so if you are still working on it, please save and draft to make sure that doesn't happen. Otherwise, if everybody accidentally submits, the only people that can go in and edit it are the compensation team. But if that does happen, please let us know. Cool. So with that, I'll jump over to the questions.
Yes, I went to the link in the handbook and I can't load the Compaas thing. Should we have had an invite for?
Yes, so Compaas, so in the handbook, there's also, we link to department specific. So not all groups are in Compaas. The groups that aren't in Compaas are our directors, our field sales groups, so enterprise and commercial and channel sales, and then demand generation. And that is because the compensation for those groups isn't in the compensation calculator. And so we're doing it separately in spreadsheets. So in the handbook, it shows the timeline for that specific review, which will be opening by, you'll receive a spreadsheet and an email from the compensation team by Friday at noon Eastern time. with the information for you to go through the cycle. It won't be in a, it'll be sort of the old way that we've done it, but we've iterated for about 715 people to be in a tool. And so we only have about 300 people to do manually in Sheets.
Okay, no, that sounds good. Thank you.
Hey, Brittany, this is AJ again. Just to confirm, field sales will not be a part of this process within Compaas. That is coming later this week with the, okay, thank you very much.
Yep, and our goal is for subsequent reviews to have everybody in Compaas. But as this first iteration to release the platform, it's only those roles that fall within the compensation calculator.
Got it, thank you.
Yeah, thanks for your question. Josh L., do you want to verbalize?
I think Josh was saying that he's alone on a different call.
Oh, okay. Chris M.
Sure. So I feel like one of the people on my slate has a mistake, and
Okay.
I have no ability to like move it down. Who would I talk to like?
Just email if you feel like there's any sort of, so the first thing that we ask, and one of the reasons why we want to make sure that managers have a lot of time with this slate, so the full 2 weeks for the managers and the leaders to review this, is make sure there aren't any errors. It might be that there was the import from Bamboo HR had incorrect information in our HRIS system, or that there was just a data error at upload. So if you see anything that does not look right or is an error, please email compensation and we can adjust it right away.
Okay, thanks.
We tried to catch all of them, but if we missed one, we would really appreciate to know ahead of time so we don't have to resolve anything after the review closes. Jason, if you want to vocalize.
So my question is that is the basic guideline that what's there should be the standard and is probably not increased unless there's something exceptional? Without the total budget, it's hard to tell if I should be sprinkling a little bit around. I noticed I was able to add like 10 million to somebody. So it seems like there's no limit on what I could potentially add.
So you can add 10 million. Your manager will probably adjust your 10 million down. You can submit anything. So the person who's managing to the budget is the leader. So in product, for example, it would be Scott that would have the remainder of his budget. He can see that on his slate. So what I would recommend is circling with your business partner and, you know, sort of understanding where your budget's coming from. And I think the business partners are working on that now. We're releasing all this information to the company the same time we're releasing it to them. So in future iterations, what we're going to try to do is have the business partners be able to talk with their groups about where their budget's coming in at before the cycle opens. This one backed up a little close to the holidays. So that's something we've taken as feedback and we'll continue to iterate on. But at the end of the day, you can submit, you know, what you would feel would be best for the team. You know, perhaps you have somebody on your slate that's only slated for a 3% cost of living adjustment, and you don't feel that that's right. You know, you want them to be at 5%. For, you know, whatever reason you want to put into the note. You can submit that. Your manager or indirect manager can bring that down if there's either not room in the budget or they disagree, and they can communicate with you why.
Okay, thanks for that.
Cool.
So Brittany, this is Ashish. I
Yes.
looked at this last night. I'll have to navigate, but there's another tab that, or maybe it's when you expand the name, it shows the stock options that they have.
It does, yes.
Right. And so looking at that for my 5 direct reports, for 2 of them, it didn't show any stock options. I think there's an error in the data. So where do I flag that?
Yeah, it could be that last time we did the import, that the stock options hadn't been put into Starta yet. So if you have concerns about the stock options, feel free to email compensation with any data issues, and we can look into and review, you know, why you're seeing what you're seeing. Over time,
I mean, I'm seeing 2 employees without ever any stock options, and I know when I made the offer, I mean, they have stock options. I mean, it's simple as
right. So that information is being imported from Carta. So it could just be that the information didn't sync, or it could be that they haven't actually had their stock options approved by the board yet.
No, these people have been here 2 years.
Okay. Yep. The stock options aren't part of this review. That's just
it's
timeline.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So the timeline is over once we're, so we've been working on implementing Compaas. We signed a contract and started the implementation process with them at the beginning of October. And so we're working on iterating to make this platform be able to do everything compensation related. Over time, that timeline will actually show you last pay increase, amount of last pay increase, stock options, all of this information to help you be able to really understand the total compensation for each of those people on your team. For now, the first thing that we uploaded was stock options. And so if there are any data issues, please let us know and we'll make sure to review that.
Excellent.
Well, and then Maren, I think you had the next item on the agenda.
Yeah, thanks, Brittany. Yeah, just a question, given that engineering has the slates mostly locked, as far as I understand, completely locked, can we communicate these changes earlier to our reports, or should we hold off until everyone completes, like every department?
Yeah, please hold off until everybody completes. We don't want to communicate anything until all of the compensation has been closed and final approved. So everything that's in Compass will also have a final approval for the budget perspective by the comp group. So we don't want to communicate anything to team members and then have to come back and explain why what we communicated isn't actuals. And there is, all the slates are locked for engineering up to the director or executive level. So there might still be a couple of adjustments. Those adjustments would be upwards, not downwards from what you see, unless there's a specific reason, error, somebody who's not performing at a commendable level, where it would be reduced down.
And yeah, thanks for that. So additional question there. What timeline are we talking about here for those final approvals? Everyone is, well, obviously rushing to find this out.
Yes, no, I completely understand. So the communication and increases are effective February 1st. So that's when we would expect to have everything completely closed down. The cycle closes on the 22nd. And then we're, you know, there's a little bit of a leeway time. We might have it to y'all by the 25th. We might have it by the 28th. But the deadline would be by February 1st. We have to get the data to payroll by then for them to be able to run and process so that it hits the February 1st payroll as well.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Matt N.
Yeah. Hi. When I log into Compass, I don't see what you're showing on the screen. I just see the list of my direct reports and their final information, their final raise, probably because they're kind of locked.
Yeah.
Yeah. But is there a way I can see that other information, the Compa group and the salary?
So once the information is locked, it just shows you the final output. If you would like, we can export, we can send you a report of what we see on our end. So if you want to be able to audit and double check, we can do that. We can also ask Compass if they can add back in some of that information. I'm not sure if they'll be able to. But what we didn't want to happen is we didn't want the engineering managers where there really isn't, that we're up against, you know, we're just barely under the budget. There's very little left to allocate. And we didn't want the engineering managers to go through the process of allocating additional funds for it to get pushed up to the top and have all of them reduced. So we wanted to make sure it was a time saver and a better process for you all. If you have any feedback on the auto lock and how this is working, you know, please feel free to put that into the issue or communicate that to us. We're hoping in the future that we don't run into budgetary constraints, but you know, we you know, have to do what we can do within our budget that we have.
And Brittany, is recruiting locked too? Because that's what I'm seeing as well.
Yes. Yes. So the people group in recruiting is also locked. We just need to make an update to the handbook that was confirmed right before the cycle opened.
Thanks, Brittany. This is Tom. I think I got the next one. First of all, thanks for pulling this together. The question I have is, I'd appreciate the discretionary budget, but if I'm a manager and I have $100 to spend, I can't manipulate that $100 within individuals at my level within support or something. Is that correct? Or can I switch, you know, somebody has a 2% and I want to change them to 3% or something, you know, that aspect of it?
Yes. So depending on the level of engineering, so it would be the most senior director within the group would have the ability to add any discretionary funds and then have those conversations with Eric on how that's allocated. To do that, you would add in the actual number of the dollar amount, or you can click the up and down button on percentage.
Yeah, I'm not talking about necessarily discretionary. I'm just talking about using the dollars that are already allocated to individuals and changing so that it's the same dollars, but it's being changed distribution-wise within the team.
I think that's more of an edge case that perhaps we can talk about offline.
Okay.
We don't want to take, so what we have here, we can't reduce what the minimum to the Compa group would be in order to be consistent. If there's an error in what the minimum to the Compa group or the cost of living is, then we can adjust it. But if there's an edge case that you're looking to solve, perhaps we can take it offline, and then whatever results we can document in the handbook on, you know, what's happening for that group.
Okay, great. I'll document them because I'm going to meet with all my managers first to make sure I'm thinking the same thing that they are when I look at it. So that'd be great. Thanks.
Hey Tom, when you get that edge case worked, can you share that within engineering? I think that's going to be, you're not going to be the only edge case, or invariably the rest of us are going to run into it as well.
I'm hoping I'm not that unique, Chris.
I don't think it's.
Yeah, I think it's going to be more common.
Cool. Wayne, it looks like you have the next one.
Yeah, so I'm right after logging into Compass, I'm seeing this error. We're having a trouble loading the section, et cetera, et cetera. I've emailed them. Are others seeing, anybody else seeing the issue, or is this unique to me? Or any known ways to solve this?
So the only issue that it could be is that you you might be using an alias to log in, but there should be a different error that you're getting. If anybody is having trouble accessing and their groups are in Compass, again, if you're in one of the groups that is still in Sheets, demand generation, field sales, Meltano, and directors, then you wouldn't be able to get into Compass because there is no data for you in Compass. You'll be receiving a spreadsheet from compensation on Friday.
It looks like Madeline's having the same issue. So I believe I should have access. And I'm seeing the same thing Madeline's seeing.
Okay. Yeah, I think it sounds like it's a Compass issue, not an issue on our end.
Okay. I've emailed them. So Madeline, if I hear back from them on solving it, I'll let you know. Looks like Jordan Bushong is also having an issue.
Right.
Brittany, would I be able to see Wayne's slate since he reports into me?
Yes.
Okay, I don't see it at all.
Having an issue, please let us know if you're having an issue getting into the system, and we can help resolve that as well. But for Madeline and Jordan, that's because your group isn't in Compass. So if you're in commercial sales, demand generation, enterprise sales, et cetera, those groups aren't actually within the Compass system. You'll get that spreadsheet and fall into the separate review cycle.
Hey, Brittany, this is Jessica. What is the best way for people, if there's an issue with comp, if there's something that needs to be changed, should they reach out via Slack? Should it go to an email? What is the best way for everyone to communicate with the comp team?
Yep. So everything, like we put in some of the Slack channel messages and things, just email compensation@gitlab.com. And then that way we can track all the tickets that come in through our inbox and make sure that they're all responded to. And if you haven't heard back from us within a couple hours, please feel free to reply again. So it surfaces to the top. This is definitely top of mind, and we want to make sure that, everybody has a good experience getting into the system, can view, and can continue with the process.
One additional question, Brittany, for distinguished engineers and directors, are they currently in the slate, or are they still to be added?
Nope. So directors will all happen outside of Compass. And that's because of the increase in the director bonus to 15%. So that's in the handbook. It's now in the compensation calculator and was announced on the company call. But changing that percentage and with those different edge cases, that's really difficult to do within a system.
Chuck, can you hear me?
I'm not sure if it needs to mute, but somebody.
Hold on 1 second. My Bluetooth is giving me fits.
See if I can mute him. Okay, there we go. So yes, directors are not in Compass. You'll receive a separate spreadsheet outside of the cycle. Cool. It looks like, Chun, you have the next agenda item?
Yes, it seems to me like there is a cutoff date of eligibility, and I figured from the result I have, it's kind of October 1st. So is that right?
Yes, so this process is only for those with a hire date on or before October 31st. And then everybody who was hired between November 1st to January 31st will participate in our catch-up compensation review, which happens in the summer.
But for my case, I saw several folks hired after October 1st that got 0.
Yes, there is no cost of living adjustment for those team members, and that all that means is that they're already aligned to their market and they're not eligible for a cost of living adjustment, so it's the 0% increase, but they're still reviewed as part of this cycle.
Okay, so October 1st. Okay, so I'm just trying to distinguish October 1st and November 1st, which one is
Yep. So everybody who you'll see in Compass is everybody with a hire date on or before October 31st. If you see somebody in Compass that has a 0% increase, it means they're not eligible for a cost of living adjustment and they're already aligned to their market. So there is no increase that needs to occur in this cycle.
Good. I'm good. Thank you.
Okay, cool. John Jay.
So it might be a dumb question, might have missed it earlier, but are we at this point as managers supposed to wait for the allocation in Compass as to the budget for us to allocate the slate? Or do we go into and start to make updates to it now so it all rolls up?
Yep, so you would want to make updates now so it rolls up. At every level, the next manager can roll it down or roll it up even more. So it's sort of a tree that goes all the way up to the top. And then with whatever budget's left up at the top, or if they're over budget, then they'll have to make those
So
adjustments.
in the Jason scenario of allocating $1 million to someone,
you can.
Don't do that.
Don't do it.
You can.
Yeah, you can. But
right.
It wouldn't. It's going to be rejected. So
no, I mean,
it'll get pushed down at some point.
I've done these before where the allocation goes down and then you have a pool to spend from to do this, and you work your way back. So okay, just want to make sure I understood the process. Thanks.
Cool. Kelly, if you want to verbalize. Oh, never mind.
I figured it out. Sorry, that was
okay.
My comment. Thank you.
No problem. John, you have the next agenda item as well.
So directly related to that question will be in the scenario where I've got some pretty wide swings of COLA adjustments, some over 7%, others, in this case 0, and I understand why 0, but really low ones like 1% or 1.5%. When we decide to allocate how this is going to work, are we going to be communicating to the individuals that says, hey, you had a COLA of this much and I gave you this much discretionary? Are they going to see that breakdown,
no.
Or are we going to communicate, here's your new pay and the details of the math of how we got to it?
Yeah, so we don't break down between COLA and, so this is a market adjustment. And what the minimum of the market adjustment is the COLA. So that's what we have that at the handbook, and somebody can at least know that, if they were hired in January before of 2019, they're at least going to get a 3% cost of living adjustment. That's the minimum, as long as they're performing at a commendable level. When you're seeing 7% or an additional percent on top of that, that's their market adjustment. So that means that they were, to get them to their market based on their compa group, their location factor, all the other factors in the compensation calculator, that's the percentage to get them to the minimum of that compa group. And then compa groups have a 7.5% range. So somebody can be learning in the role 0.85 to 0.924. And so this would be to get them to 0.85 if you're seeing 7%. You have that room, that discretionary then to then increase them more, maybe one person's at only. The only thing you're going to want to avoid is, because this will be pushed back, is sending anybody outside of the entire compensation range. So if somebody would go over the top end of expert in the role, that's where you would have to either get additional approvals from the comp group, or that's why their percent might be smaller, because they're already paid well to market for their role.
Okay, thank you. That helps.
Cool. Darva, if you want to vocalize.
Yes, it's very similar. In my view, I don't see the breakdown of how the final number came about. So I can't tell if it was all cost of living or if it's all compa groups. I also wasn't clear on if they started during a certain month and it's prorated. So to me, it's not very clear at all. I think when I saw the number, the first thing, and what most people might think of, is this is based on my comp group. So is there any way we could be more transparent?
Yeah, so we wanted to make sure that we didn't overwhelm with information. I think that's really good feedback in the next review, where we can show like what the market increase is versus the COLA, and then what the ultimate output is. Compaas wasn't built to sort of show all of those different factors. They just show the final comp adjusted increase. So we can look into building that into future cycles. What we did do is we created a sheet though, where it shows what the fiscal year 21 and fiscal year 20 location factors are. We added it to the Compaas issue, so I can also share it on this sheet as soon as we're off the call. So you can see what the percent increase was. So for example, if there was a increase in location factor in a city, I'm in DC now, in DC, you would see what that percent increase is, and that'll help you understand perhaps where that percent increase is coming from. But we don't have the breakdown that we can share with all managers, since that was something that was done on the GitLab side for the entirety of the eligibility slate in Compaas. But I think that is great feedback on transparency for next time.
Thanks.
Eric
I've
B.
got the next one. I think this has mainly been answered. But if a manager of mine submits a slate and I need to tweak it or whatever, I don't have the ability to send that back down, do I?
No, so you would tweak it on your end. So let's say that one of your managers submits something to you, you disagree, you either move somebody's discretionary up or down, you would do that on your end, and then you would submit your slates then up to Scott.
Okay, cool. I just wanted to make sure that I knew that I had to go have a separate conversation outside of the tool in order for that to happen. So thank you.
Cool, no problem. Craig, if you want to vocalize.
Yeah, it's kind of two questions. So first thing is about levels. Like there's a cryptic level code, which I couldn't find anywhere in the handbook. There's obviously the role, which is in the handbook, but the level's not there. So I'd love insight into that. And then one of my directs doesn't have a level. So I wanted to know if that's an error or if something else is going on. And then second question, similar to Darva's question, how do we get visibility as managers to the ranges? Like very simply, like here's the compa range. Like I know all the factors are documented, but it's not like for this employee, here's the range, here's where they are, just so that it's very easy to understand where they're at. Those are the two questions.
Sure. Yeah, so you would actually want to look at the compensation calculator. That's where our ranges are held, is in the compensation calculator. There's not a way within an annual comp review platform to build that in. We tried, we couldn't do it on this first iteration to kind of show you what the top end of the range would be, the top end of the comp group. You know, that's not typical to a lot of companies to have a compensation calculator. So you would look at our global compensation calculator that we have to be able to sort of get an understanding for what the range is for that person in their location. The level code is a job code. So what we did is, and it's, let me add the link from the handbook. It's on the global compensation page. In order to be able to run a lot of these analysis as we scale, and we have a lot of different benchmarks and job families, is we created job codes for these. And so that cryptic number is on, that's on our end. If something is missing, that's okay. It just means that it's either a new job or the data didn't import from Bamboo HR because it hadn't been added yet. We audited everything on our back end and imported the eligibility file into Compaas. So everything still should be matching our compensation calculator. If it doesn't, let us know, because we can look at any errors that are coming up as part of that. But you can ignore that job code for now.
Got it. So my takeaway is the tool isn't really, like in V1, isn't going to scale to really do it quickly. We have to basically look it up manually via the handbook link for every employee just to understand that. Is that my takeaway?
Yeah. So if you have a backend engineer, for example, in San Francisco, and you wanted to look at what the range would be for them in San Francisco as expert in their role, you would go to the compensation calculator and see what that range is. The Compaas platform is solely to allocate the discretionary funds and not so much to show you what the ranges are, but we're hoping that we can get there over time. You know, this is our first iteration using Compaas. So any feedback that you have on what would be useful for you as a manager when you're making these allocations would be super useful for us to be able to give them that product feedback.
That is a critical piece.
Yeah,
So
we did try. I will say we did try. It's a bit complicated compared to, we don't have static ranges like a lot of companies do where this, you know, job pays this amount of money, top end, low end. We have a formula. And so to be able to do that, they have to build a lot of code in, which they're willing to do. We just have to give them time to iterate on it.
Totally get it. Thank you for the answer.
Cool. Thank you for the feedback.
So my question was just getting a better understanding of the company arrays. If it's entirely due to the cost of living adjustment and if the compa ratio is actually reflected there.
Yes. So what it is, so if you look at the fiscal year 21 calculator that was released and is updated now on the handbook, you would see either the greater of the cost of living adjustment or the minimum of bringing them into their compa group. So if you put somebody in as expert in their role and that outputs a salary of 100,000, then that, you know, and let's say the person's paid 90,000, you would see 100,000 in there. Let's say that the output of that minimum of the compa group was 90,000, you'd see 93,000. So you'd see whichever is greater. This allows to bring at least to what the minimum from a people perspective, what we would expect the person to see, then allowing the managers and leaders to allocate where within the compa groups somebody's going to fall. And in some of the groups, there are budgetary constraints because there's just no additional money to allocate within compa group, but that's why it's brought to the minimum of the compa group in Compaas.
I noticed one of the adjustments was up to about 13%, which seems very large. Is there a cap on the adjustments?
There's not a cap. So our compensation philosophy is that we pay to market. So the adjustments, you know, that's why we have the cost of living as sort of the floor to make sure that everybody's compensation is reviewed at least once a year. And if you received an increase in 2019 to your salary, for every reason except for relocation, you're actually not eligible for a cost of living adjustment. And that's also documented in the handbook. But the cost of living acts as a way for us to make sure that everybody's reviewed, everybody has, you know, some sort of salary increase throughout the year, as long as they're performing at a commendable level. But if somebody isn't aligned to market, let's say there was a big jump in the location factor or the benchmark, we want to make sure that we bring them up to that because that's what we would hire somebody new at today.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, of course. Hila, if you want to verbalize your question.
I think Hila, you've got the next one.
Hi. Yeah. Can you hear me? Okay. Yeah, I think my question is kind of related to hires who are hired in October, November, December, and January. My understanding is that they will not participate in the annual compensation review that is happening now. And in August next year, there will be a catch-up compensation review, but that one doesn't include the cost of living, only the kind of the compensation review part.
Yes. So with the exception of everyone hired through October 31st is in this review cycle. So anybody hired November 1st through January 31st, what we'll do once January is over and we have all the new hires is we'll look to make sure everybody fits in range for the whole range. So the 0.85 to 1.15 compa range. So learning through expert. Because we don't want anybody to fall out of the bottom. So if they do fall out of the bottom, we'll bring them up and that'll come out of the budget for the catch-up comp review. But we don't have enough data or time and job to be able to accurately analyze compa groups. So what's happened in the past is since we haven't had that data, somebody's gone, perhaps 14 months without a compensation review, and that's not ideal either. So this summer will be our first catch-up compensation review. But what we look at here is for that specific group of people, what is their compa group, and now let's align their market to that compa group now that we know that that's where they are. And they only have to wait somewhere between 6 to 8 months for that compensation review instead of potentially 12 to 15.
I guess my question is then, will they be missing out on the cost of living review compared to like the peers?
No, because they won't have gone. So the purpose of the cost of living adjustment is to make sure you don't go more than a year without having any sort of, your salary's at least looked at once a year. Their salary will be looked at. So they'll be paid to market. And then if they didn't receive an increase as part of the catch-up comp review, then they'd get a COLA at the next review cycle. So it will ease out over time. Everybody will be looked at for all of those different factors. It just wouldn't hit for eligibility yet. Cool. Does that answer your question, or do you have a follow-up?
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. James, if you want to vocalize.
Yeah, sure. I think it's been answered already, but I just noticed the first time I logged in that it had already submitted the slates. So.
Cool. Yeah, and if there are any issues with that, if you notice a discrepancy on your slate, if there's somebody that you would want to allocate, additional discretionary funds to, I would definitely recommend going to your business partner or your leader if your slate was auto-approved to communicate that so that the leadership has that information to be able to allocate the very small amount of funds that are left.
Cool. Thank you.
Yeah, of course. We just didn't want engineering managers to go through the whole process of adding discretionary income. That would just be taken off at the leadership level. So we hope that that's a better experience for you than putting a lot of time and energy into the manager review. If you have feedback for us as a compensation team, though, we'd love to hear that to make sure that we're iterating on our processes and how we're doing this for the next cycle. Seth, if you want to vocalize.
Sure. I'm just having a technical issue when I log into Compass. I'm not seeing what I expect. I'm seeing an error. So I understand that this might be specific to me, and I can check back with you or somebody else offline.
Cool. Yeah, if you're receiving an error, what we realized today is that you might not have a slate. So you actually might not have anybody that's eligible for comp review in your group, which meant that no slate was created and no email was registered in their system. So feel free to reach out to the compensation at GitLab alias, and we'll be able to look into that and be able to explain why.
Okay, thank you.
Cool. And then Olivia might not be here. I'll pause for a second in case you are here. Okay, so is the current compensation shown in gray in Compass based on the new exchange rate from January 1st? Yes, it is. So we reviewed all of the compensation that we have for local and updated all of the rates in Bamboo HR and then brought those over into Compass. And then Natasha, if you want to verbalize.
Yep, I have the next two. Okay, so the first one is if the role has kind of changed and morphed based off of company need for the person since they started, is the comp review for kind of their new updated role? And then how is that done? Is it like a similar title search, or how do you guys account for that?
So that's a transfer process. That's a completely different process than annual comp reviews. So what we're looking at here is just in the same role for the level, benchmark, comp ratio location that they're in. If somebody's in a different role than what they're currently being benchmarked against, we can, because that would be a transfer or a benchmark change instead of just part of the annual compensation review process.
Okay, that's helpful. And then the other one is, so I know we have comp and cost of living going on at the same time. You know, how do you want us to communicate that to our direct reports? Like, should we do it at the same time? Are we going to receive language around reasoning? Kind of what's that next step plan once all of this is approved and goes through in the systems?
Yeah, so once it's all approved, so I also thank you for bringing that up. That's a really good point. Is once it's so everything that's in the system now is tentative, depending on final approvals. So please don't confirm anything with your direct reports until you get the green light from the compensation team, because we have to make sure all the budget's balanced and get the approval from the comp group before anything can be communicated down. You should expect to be able to communicate to your team by February 1st at the latest. We'll have everything confirmed by then. But so what we have here is it's the total annual compensation review increase. The market increase and the cost of living increase are components of how we calculate that. We did get some feedback in the last call as well. It'd be great to be able to see what those are, but it's an either or. So it's sort of a whichever is greater is what we proceed with. So when we're communicating these increases, you know, what we've done in the past is it's been an annual compensation review increase. We looked at you, we looked at your market, we made sure that we at least gave the cost of living adjustment. And so this is what the output was percentage wise, or, you know, dollar amount, however you want to communicate it that way. So it's all in one. It's not two separate things that we're looking at. It's just the way that the calculation is built is to look at both factors at once to make sure that somebody's comp is reviewed at this time.
Cool. Thank you.
I hope that's helpful.
Yeah, that is. And you guys are great about communicating. So I'm sure when it's time to communicate that to our direct reports, we'll all get a notification of like, hey, please communicate this to direct reports and this is how. So that's helpful.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. And Compaas will update. So we'll add additional instructions to the handbook when that's time, you know, how to log in, what to, you know, maybe a little bit of language about how to phrase it, you know, so that it's company-wide, very similar. But, you know, I know it can be a little difficult only because this is a first review for a lot of people at GitLab. When we did the review last year, I think there was 300 eligible participants, and this year we have almost 1,000. So it's really exciting for that kind of growth, but this might be brand new. And if you have questions, please let us know so we can document them in the handbook for clarity.
Great, thanks.
Cool. John, if you want to vocalize.
Yeah, so I'm still a little bit confused over what to do.
Okay.
If there isn't any discretionary raises at all, is it just a matter of us like, okay, just save and submit?
So if your slate wasn't auto-approved, if you can go in and allocate discretionary, then there is discretionary funds in your group. So you can sync up with your business partners or with your leaders, you know, to be able to kind of work through that. This is the first time that managers have had discretionary funds to allocate in this way. And so the business partners in compensation are sort of working through, you know, what are best practices, what should we put into the handbook. But for now, you know, you have the compensation calculator that you can use to be able to see what the ranges are. The only exception is people can't go over the top of the range. So if the discretionary amount that you're putting in puts them over the very, very top end of the band of expert, then we're going to kick that back because we don't want to make sure the bands are there for a reason. That's sort of the edge. So, but otherwise you can add in the discretionary of what you, so like for instance, if you see that one person on your team got a 3% cost of living and that was it, and you know, it's because they're at the middle of their compa group and you want to bring them to the higher end of their compa group, you can add in those funds to make up that difference and submit it. Your manager can edit your discretionary before they submit it to their manager. So it can go down the line for approvals in that way, and then you'll be able to see what the final result was for your team at the end.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
Yeah, of course. Dan, if you want to revise your question.
Hi, thanks for doing this. Really appreciated the communication here. It's great. I was just wondering if we're looking at increasing some transparency in this process next iteration.
Yes, so there was a lot of things that we really wanted to do. This is the first time we've used a tool, so there were some limitations that we have with respect to what we could put into Compaas. So I don't know if this would be a huge surprise to everybody, but when we look at compensation vendors, we have a very complicated compensation system, having a formula that covers globally, which posed its own challenges during implementation. What we'd like to be able to add in subsequent years, and what we wanted to be able to add this year, but weren't capable of in the short time frame that we had, was you know, what percent is merit, what percent is cost of living, so that that's a little bit clearer. What the locality is that we're using for the person. You can see that in Bamboo. But you know, right now you have to go to a lot of different places to find all the information you need. Our end goal is to bring all of that into one system. Whether that, you know, but right now it's sort of just our first iteration. And so any feedback you have on what would be useful, what you feel is missing, we'd love to be able to give that feedback to our product, you know, to Compaas as a product team, and let them know what would be useful for our team. They're very excited about product review by a group of engineers. So
yeah, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. I apologize. I just wanted to say maybe if we created an issue for feedback around the process, that would be a good place to start.
Yes, absolutely. The downside is that we didn't have everything completely implemented. We signed a contract with Compaas at the end of September. We started implementing in October, and it took up until about Christmas to get it to a place where we could have it. So I agree that we should have opened an issue. I think we can do that in subsequent years, but.
Oh, no, I just meant for feedback from us after this cycle.
Oh, yes, there is one open. Yes,
there is?
yes. There is an open issue. It's linked from the handbook, but let me find it and I can paste it here.
No, it's in there already. You're good. Thank you very much.
Yeah, of course. We want to know. We want to make it better next go around. Rob, if you want to verbalize.
Yes, thanks, Brittany. When I was doing my Compa review, I submitted feedback both on the Compa band that I was putting my members in, but also whereabouts in that band I saw them fitting. And I guess I've seen that at the end of that, we've ended up putting everyone at the low end of that band, and that feedback didn't get in there. Is there a mechanism either now or in the future anticipated where we could accurately represent where within a Compa band we see our staff?
So that's what used to be known as experience factor. So that used to be a single output, and then it was part of the formula. That had its own challenges, and typically the discretionary that we have in Compaas right now would be able to help you allocate that. So if the Compa band that you had for a member of your team was learning, and it was 100 to 120,000, and you wanted them to be at 110, and you know the compensation adjusted was only at 100, you could add that 10,000 of additional discretionary to submit for approval. Because of budgetary constraints in this cycle for engineering, we just don't have the budget to be able to bring everybody into a discretionary amount for those bands. So that's why we did a consistent review of let's bring everybody at least to their minimum of their Compa group or their cost of living. And then, you know, we can talk with the leaders about the very, very small amount of discretionary funds that are left on how those will be allocated.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, of course. Kenny, if you want to verbalize.
Yeah, thanks, Brittany. Yeah, I guess I'm just kind of looking for guidance. Mentally, I was kind of thinking, well, if a team member started 2.5, 3 months ago, you know, generally shouldn't be expecting much more than cost of living. But now that I walk through the timeline, that would mean they would get nothing other than cost of living for 15 months. And so I'm wondering if you have guidance on how we should think about, especially team members who started close to that cutoff date.
Sure. So that's why the cost of living is prorated. So based on hire date in 2019, you know, if somebody was hired, they might get a 0.99% cost of living adjustment, or they might get a 3% cost of living adjustment if they've been here the whole year as the floor, as the minimum, plus whatever the Compa group adjustments are. I would definitely sync with your leadership and your business partner on how discretionary funds should be allocated. You know, theoretically, we would hire somebody in October, and in this 3-month time frame, their market really wouldn't have moved much. So that's one of the things. The October month is going to be the hardest, I think, because you only have a couple months worth of data. But at this point now, you know, you can look at the Compa group that you assigned to them in November, and you know, maybe you have a better and clearer picture of where within that Compa group now they would fall, that you have more than just 1 month of data to go off of, and be able to apply those discretionary funds.
Okay, so going back, you said the cost of living for this year for any of, and I should think of that as also an experience factor, or not, a location factor adjustment, is prorated?
The cost of living adjustment. So the cost of living adjustment is the floor of what we would give anybody coming into GitLab, you know, as part of this compensation review. It's prorated based on hire date though. So if you started in October, there isn't a cost of living adjustment because you had just started at the company. If you had been here since January before, it would be 3%. And that's the floor of what you would get. And then we look at all of the different inputs to the compensation calculator, location factor, benchmark changes, Compa group changes. And we, at the minimum, say, you know, the adjusted compensation should be no less than this minimum of your Compa group. And then whatever additional funds, you know, you would like to allocate to those team members based on how those percentages work out, then that you and your leadership team can do that in Compaas.
Okay, thank you. That's helpful.
Good, thank you. Shital, if you want, or actually, sorry, Mech, if you want to verbalize.
Thanks, Brittany. So from the director standpoint, if I input my suggestions and save them as draft, will my direct reports who are managers see wait at the end state will approve at the
Yeah,
senior
so
leadership
once
level?
so when you save and draft, that your leadership team isn't going to see them, but once you save and submit your, what you would put in as discretionary, then that'll get submitted up to your manager. They can still adjust those before they do a final submission of all of their slates.
Correct, but the question is, will my direct reports who are managers see these numbers in progress, or do they have to wait until it's approved in its final state?
Oh, got it. Wait until it's approved in its final state.
Got it. Okay, thank you.
Sheetal, if you want to verbalize.
Yes, thanks, Brittany. One of my direct report was hired at growing in the role, and now when I look at Compa factor compensation ranges, that's at learning in the role. So my question is the adjustment that's shown in Compa automatically adjusted to show these changes, or should I add it to the discretionary funds?
Sure. So what this Compa group pulls from is what was submitted in November through Bamboo HR. So the Compa group review process that we went through at the month of November is what we're using to pull this data. So if that Compa group was entered incorrectly into Bamboo HR or pulling incorrectly into Compaas, please let us know. But that's how that information is being pulled. What somebody was hired at, unless that was what was also inputted into Bamboo HR as their November cycle, it's not reflecting in there purposely.
Oh no, say like this person was hired in February and hired at growing in the role. And now the compensation range that's shown by Compa factor matches with learning in the role. So how do we, make that?
Right. So the only Compa group that's taken into account in this cycle is what you as a manager submitted in November into Bamboo HR as part of the Compa group review.
Uh-huh.
So if you submitted learning in the role in November, that's what would be showing in Compaas and would be used to calculate that Compa group minimum comp adjusted field. If you submitted growing into Bamboo HR and that was approved, that's what you would see. But if you want to look at this specific individual, I'm happy to take that offline and make sure that there's not an error happening.
Sure. Thanks.
Okay. Yeah, of course. Hila, if you want to.
Yeah, so this is more kind of related to Kenny's question. I think one of my team members seemed to be under the impression because the location factor in his area jumped from, for example, 0.8 to 0.85 recently. I think he was under the impression that automatically increased his compensation by whatever that 5%. Is that not the case? Like, is that a misunderstanding?
Yes, that would be a misunderstanding. So what the compensation review does is it takes all of the benchmarks into account. It would take all the different inputs into account. Their benchmark, their location factor, their Compa group, contract type factor, as well as one that I'm missing and I don't know what I didn't repeat. But there's 5 factors in there that we all take into account. And then that is what summates is an output for the compensation adjusted. So let's say that their benchmark, if all the factors stayed the same, they were at the median of the compensation calculator to begin with, and then they didn't have any sort of benchmark changes, didn't have any other changes, then theoretically there would be a 5% increase for that location factor adjustment. But if their Compa group changed, maybe it went down or they were higher in the Compa group than before, it wouldn't reflect. So it's not an automatic 5% increase based on one factor. It's an increase or review based on all of the factors as part of the compensation analysis.
Okay, and also kind of related, are the compensation range changed as well?
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
So if you go to the compensation calculator now, it was announced on the company call earlier today, but if you go in, the compensation calculator is live for fiscal year 21. So you can go in and you can see, if this person in this location, what would the range be based on their Compa groups? And that can really help you when you're doing this analysis. If you do have discretionary funds, to say, okay, I think they're learning in the role, but they're at the higher end of learning in the role. That range is 100 to 120. I want them more at the 120 side of this.
Yeah, I think what I meant is, I think when they were hired, for example, end of last year or like September or something, the number for their area, their role and their comp group, for example, the range is from here to here. Now it seems to be different. like
Yes.
even for the same location, for the same comp group, for the same role, but that's just like the regular update of the compensation.
So yeah, so what we do is we go through the Compa Group review in November, and then in December, the compensation team reviews and gets approval for all the iterations to the compensation calculator for that next fiscal year. So the Comp Calc was updated. Now this manager review is to make sure that our team is aligned to what they would make if they were, you know, a new hire coming in, which is why there's no cap on these increases. So typically for most groups, unless there's budgetary concerns. So what we do is we would look at, you know, okay, we have a product manager in San Francisco that's thriving in the role. What is the range that we would pay somebody for that specific role? And then that's what the minimum you're seeing is the low end of their Compa Group. And then you can add discretionary funds, you know, upwards and above that if they should be higher within their Compa Group.
Okay, so we are trying to match them to this new compensation range.
Exactly. Yes, we have a pay to market philosophy, not a pay to performance philosophy. There's a bit of performance in Compa Groups, but Compa Groups are knowledge, skills, and abilities. Your performance might have a say in that, but you know, this is to make sure that all of our team is aligned to their market pay ranges.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Patrick. Just had one or a couple of sort of related questions. It was my understanding that this would not be decreasing anyone's pay as part of this process, that it would only be used for increases. Is that right?
Correct. So the way that the calculation is run is it takes the minimum compensation adjusted, takes the greater of either the market adjustment based on the compensation calculator inputs or the cost of living adjustment based on your hire date. So the minimum you would receive, as long as you're in good standing. So as long as your team member is performing at a commendable level. If somebody's on a PIP, if they're not performing at a commendable level, we shouldn't be giving them an increase for a multitude of reasons. So we would just ask that you let us know that that's happening. But that's the floor of what you'd receive. And then there's no cap on what the increase can be to make sure that you are aligned to your market.
Okay, great. And then my related question is, are we doing the same in terms of their job level? So like I have some people that were hired at like an intermediate level, or maybe not even not a senior level, but at an intermediate level, who are now reflected in Bamboo HR as a junior, and they have a concern that they've received a demotion, and I'm having to kind of talk through that process.
Yeah, so some of that re-leveling, I would definitely reach out to your business partner there. I might not be able to give you the best information on the communication piece behind that. You know, the exercise that the management went through to re-level teams that didn't have levels. So, you know, for customer success, there weren't levels up until this last, you know, I think it was last quarter that it was implemented.
Right.
So I would reach out to, I think Lorna is your business partner that can help you, you know, talk through each specific case.
Okay, thank you.
Cool. Promotions. So this doesn't include any promotions. If there's a pending promotion in Bamboo HR, we can take a look at that as increase for the annual comp review and then look at what that promotion increase would be. We might remove the person from the cycle for the promotion. It just depends. So please let us know if there are promotions. Promotions don't happen as part of the cycle. So you wouldn't go in and say, I'd like to promote somebody and use budget to do that. This is only for the annual compensation review to keep everybody at their same level. Does that answer the question around promotions?
So if we do an annual compensation review, would somebody then, if we promote them out of that cycle, like 3 months later, would they then be eligible for a raise at that time as well?
So the only time that somebody's eligible for a compensation adjustment is during annual comp review, during a promotion, or during a benchmark change. If you know something happened in the calculator and don't fall within range. So it would depend on what the situation is as to why they're being reviewed for an additional increase. But if somebody was removed for a promotion, they're not eligible for a cost of living adjustment if they got promoted. And if they were recently or just promoted, theoretically, they're already in line with their market because their comp was just looked at. So that's why they would be removed from the cycle. It's just that it would probably show a 0% increase regardless.
Okay, great. Thank you.
But they are still eligible to partake if somebody was promoted. But any promotions that are currently happening right now, we have the new ranges already posted. But for instance, if somebody was promoted in November, those ranges weren't up yet. So we keep them in the cycle to make sure that they aren't disenfranchised by being promoted 2 months too early.
Got it. Okay, thank you.
Cool. Remy, if you want to vocalize.
Yes. So I think this was already answered in the other sessions, but I just wanted to reconfirm. So the slates are actually logged, right? And also I see a saved and submitted. So what does it actually mean? Like maybe I'm missing something, or this is my first time into this process, so I just wanted to understand that. So could you please explain a bit about that?
Yeah, absolutely. So this is the first time for everybody in this process. So it's a really, really great question. And I want to make sure that any questions that you all have, you feel comfortable to ask. But essentially what happened in engineering, and people, we need to update the handbook since it recently just was finalized for people, is there's very, very limited budget left. So having managers go through and allocate funds without being able to see the budget and then have them all get put back down, it seemed like a lot of wasted time and effort and not a very good experience for the management team. So what we did is we saved and we locked the slates so that you can see what all the increases are and make sure that they make sense. So for example, if somebody's in there and there's an error in their before compensation, or the compa group that was submitted maybe wasn't the right compa group, maybe it was inputted into Bamboo HR incorrectly. Those are times where we can catch some of those errors. So we want to make sure that managers can see what's happening. And also once the cycle's over, you can log in and see what the final result is to be able to share that with your team member. Because otherwise, the only way we can communicate it with managers is to put it into Bamboo HR, let you know it's in Bamboo HR, hope the person doesn't log in and see it, which is not a very good experience for anybody. We want to make sure that you have the place to be able to view it. In the past, we used to do everything in Google Sheets, which we still have a small portion of the org in Google Sheets, and it's actually the same number of people that were in Google Sheets in the comp review last year. We've just added 700 people to our comp review cycle in the last 12 months, which is crazy and exciting, but it's not scalable or feasible for our team to create individualized Google Sheets to share with managers what the output is.
Awesome. Yeah, thanks, Brittany. That
Yeah,
helps.
of course.
And I just had one more question related to it. So, is there a way to understand the factors behind the raise? Because if I should just look at the percentage, right, it is not making sense for me sometimes. Because when I actually think about the compa group that a particular team member had got and the raise, I wasn't able to directly relate it. So, is there a way to understand it better?
Yeah, so one of the things that we really want to do for the next cycle, and we did try with this one, but we weren't able to developmentally have Compaas create all of the fields. One thing that we learned through finding a compensation vendor and implementing a software and opening a review cycle is that apparently having global compensation is not very simple when you have as many location factors and benchmarks and places where we compensate people. So one thing that we're still iterating on is adding a lot of that information into the system. And one piece of feedback that we've gotten that we 100% agree with is being able to show what the breakdown is between what the market adjustment would have been and what the cost of living adjustment would have been. For now, you can go to the compensation calculator and you can look at that team member, and be able to see like, okay, the low end of a software engineering test in San Francisco would be X. That's what's showing in Compaas. That's where that comes from. If it's not that number, if it's a higher number, then it's their cost of living adjustment. But regardless of what the adjustment is, it's the annual compensation review adjustment. So that's just the calculation, is looking at those two different pieces and taking the greater. So when we're communicating this with team members, we can let them know that the end result is this percentage. And if they're curious around the breakdown or they disagree with it, we're happy to walk them through it. But we're not going to be able to share exactly what that formula looks like since it happened in an eligibility file of everyone in Compaas.
Got it. Yeah, thanks.
Cool. But it definitely is something we want to iterate on for next year.
Sure. Yeah, thanks.
If you have any questions in the meantime about comp, you can feel free to email compensation@gitlab.com and they will answer your questions there. But thank you all for attending and have a great rest of your day.